Are you a chiropractor with a struggling practice, having a hard time finding and keeping patients? Is your staff falling short of expectations? I'm Dr. Scott Sawyer, and DC Trainings has the answers that you need. So tune in now and find out how.
Hello, welcome to DC Trainings. I'm Dr. Scott Sawyer. Thank you for joining our webinar today. And we have kind of an exciting section to cover because we're actually going to cover two topics. I had missed a week, and so we're doubling up, but we have two exciting topics today. We have the CA delivers the report of findings and reviews subluxations. So we'll cover both of those, but let me jump right in and get off to a good start because we do have quite a bit of material to cover. So let me just pull up this screen for you and we'll jump right in. There we go. Okay. So as you can see, today we're going to start with the CA delivers the report of findings. So in this section, and just to kind of reflect back, because you can see on the screen that we talked about greeting the patient and the spouse last time. And that was where we walked in, we had a nice introduction, and we introduced ourselves. And I say ourselves because that could be either the doctor by themselves, or it could be the doctor and the CA to the patient and the spouse. So there's an introduction that happens in that section, which is why we allocate a whole section to greeting the patient and the spouse. Oh, that's that first, that's the first section. So let's dive into this and now carry it forward into doctors. You left the room and your CA is going to deliver the report of findings, or you yourself are going to deliver the report of findings. Either way. Okay, so let's go ahead and jump in and go through this. I want to just start with pointing out a couple things around. Oops, there we go. I have to change my view again. There we go. Okay. I want to just point this out because the important part of you know what, and I apologize. I'm using one screen today, so there we go. This is better. Okay. So the freedom that comes with having your CA deliver the report of findings is huge. What it means is that you get the luxury of actually being able to step away and then go and continue taking care of patients while your CA is delivering that report of findings, which greatly increases your capacity to serve more patients, to streamline your office. And as you can see today, I've got my surfboard behind me. I'm actually on vacation this week, but here to bring you the information that you need to run a successful practice. Meanwhile, at my office, I actually got my statistics sent to me through an email letting me know that we had our report of findings going. We had our new patients going. So whether you're in the office or not in the office, you want to make sure that your practice is a beacon for quality healthcare and you don't have a setback for your patients when you're out of town and not able to take care of them. You want to make sure that this continues, and we'll show you how to do that with DC Trainings. This is one piece of that. So let's continue on. I apologize if you can hear the sound in the background. There's a machine or a tool that's going on outside my window. So you may hear that, but I'm sure you can still hear me as well. Okay. So let's move ahead and talk about how this is going to happen when your CA is delivering the report of findings. The first thing I want to say is that it's important to have your whole team trained to deliver the report of findings. And as you can see on the screen here, this is my office where all of my CAs are trained to do that which I'm teaching you right now. So there's a complete training that goes across the board for them all to be able to do the report of findings and deliver these. Okay, so that's important. By cross training, you'll achieve that. Next is to jump into what's actually happening in the report of findings. So I'll frame this because remember that I stepped out of the room and my CA now is delivering the report of findings, or the doctor is going to deliver the report of findings. Now, either way, we want to start by emphasizing the severity of the patient's subluxations in a general and educational way. So in other words, we're going to talk about subluxations not in terms of the specifics of that patient, we're basically doing a recap of what we covered on the first visit. And with the details that we covered, we're kind of taking it to the next level now. And we're also at the same time, we're going to be introducing the spouse to these concepts that we were talking about at the last visit as well. So there's an emphasis around these subluxation severity. And I'll show you that when we get into that in just a minute when we go through the website. So I'll show you those details. But we want to start by emphasizing the severity of them. Now, I want to talk about that word severity for a minute, because whether you're feeling like the severity is advanced bone spurs, disc thinning, spinal fusion, or whether you're talking about severity as in a misalignment where the spine's not aligned correctly. Either way, the severity of those different phases of a subluxation is very subjective. So I want you to remember that, because in no way would I want you to minimize the severity of a subluxation just because it wasn't as advanced as, say, some other patients. Anybody who has a subluxation that is affecting their health in any capacity can be considered a serious condition. So we want to make sure that we put this on the proper priority or perspective for that patient and emphasize the severity of it, right, in a general way. And I'll show you actually on this next picture that I can show you here, because oops, there we go. Advance the slide. There we go. And I'll show you a picture of that in just a minute, but here we go. So the patient now is with your CA or with you, doctor. And what you're going to do is say, as a doctor, you'll say, I reviewed your file in detail. Or the CA is going to say, the doctor and I reviewed your file. Now, what does that do? What that does is, for a CA to deliver the report of findings, it elevates their status as a professional in the mind of the patient up to being on par with the doctor. So it builds a level of respect and value, especially for those patients who maybe are a bit skeptical about having the doctor's assistant deliver the actual report of the findings. So it elevates the patient's respect and view with your CA as an authority on the subject. Now, the next part is review requirements to accept the patient. Now, I want to frame this in two ways. The first is, as a doctor, what I would say is, and I'll just use Dr. Matt, you can be my patient today. So Matt, I just want to let you know that based on the severity of your condition, or based on the level of subluxations in your spine, in order for me to accept you as a patient, it's going to be important for you to follow through with my recommendations. Now, if you're unable to do that, what's going to happen to your condition? And Matt says, well, it's probably going to get worse. That's right. Now, and I would rather not have you as a patient than have you be getting worse while I'm taking care of you. I'm sure you would agree with that. That's correct. Now, on the flip side, though, if you are able to follow through with my recommendations, then we're going to get the best results for you, and you're going to see your condition rise instead of fall. Now, under that environment, I would be more than happy to accept you as a patient, because I would know, based on my recommendations, that your condition is going to get better. So I want to just emphasize that if I'm going to accept you as a patient, that it's important you're able to follow through with all my recommendations in order for us to get the best results for you. Now, that is line 2 on your screen, the requirements to accept the patient. And I intentionally chose Dr. Matt because he's relatively new in practice. I want to emphasize that, because for those of you who are new in practice, maybe you need your patient. In fact, we all need patients. That's actually a rhetorical statement, right? We all need our patients. But to put yourself in a perspective or in a position where you as the doctor are establishing a threshold by which you would accept a patient, that's going to elevate not only your results, but it's also going to elevate the compliance and the follow through and the retention of your existing patients, ultimately getting them better results. So that's why I want to emphasize that at this point in the process. The next is to demonstrate what a subluxation is, again, in a general sense, and we use some plastic spinal segments for that, with 2 things being emphasized in that explanation. One is the subluxation. So very simply, and I know I'm oversimplifying for those of us as doctors, we learned this in much more detail in school. And so oversimplifying it may seem almost insulting or diminishing. But remember, we're talking to somebody who doesn't have the background that we do. and we just want them to get the basics. So simplifying it and putting it on the lower shelf where everyone can reach it will help your patient understand the gravity of what's about to begin in terms of their care with you. So we're going to start by using a plastic model and talking about the subluxation with the misalignment, the pinched nerve, the compression of the discs, and the transition from that into the subsequent phases of degeneration, and emphasizing the end stage. The end stage is where, if the subluxation is allowed to run its course, then the end stage would ultimately mean the bones are fused. There's no more help that can be provided in that level of the spine, and ultimately the patient's going to be in a pretty bad place for the long term. So it's important to emphasize that end stage. And if you remember that there's a famous quote that says that people will do more to avoid pain than they will to gain pleasure. So I know that I'm suggesting that you emphasize that end stage, and it has part of that in mind, where you're showing them the end stage so they realize if they don't take care of this, this has a bad outcome. But if they do take care of it, then it has a great outcome. So we want to emphasize those two sides of that equation. Now, these are the models that I would suggest that you have. There's other ones out there, I know, but these are the ones that we use. And if you follow my mouse across the screen, you can see the one on the left is a normal alignment with normal disc spaces, nice, healthy, thick nerves. As we move to the right side, the disc gets smaller. That's the compression that occurs from a subluxation. So it starts to compress the discs and they break down. Now, again, that's the simplified version. You could go into more detail and say that with a subluxation, it freezes the bones to some degree. The cartilage loses nutrients inside, and as a result, the cartilage cells start to die from the inside out, allowing the disc to become unstable and compress down. And from that standpoint, the body responds by trying to protect the nervous system. It sends messages down through the spine into that area, trying to heal it. Unfortunately, there's no nerves inside the disc. So the nerves, when they get down there with those messages trying to fix the problem, the only tissues they have control over are what? The bones. And as a result, those bone spurs begin to grow, trying to protect the nervous system, even though the problem is not in the bones, technically, it's in the discs. So it's a catch-22, right? The bones end up fusing in an attempt to protect the nervous system, and the discs die off, where if there had been nerves inside the disc would have just healed. But unfortunately, the body doesn't have that capacity, and so it's a catch-22. That's one of the huge goals of chiropractic care, is to keep that mobility in the spine and the discs and keep balance there so that the bones don't fuse and the discs maintain their nutrients. Now, again, that's a little more in depth. If a patient asks a question, or maybe one of your patients is a neurologist or an orthopedic surgeon and they know the anatomy, then obviously you could go into more detail. But we want to provide a explanation either way and tailor it to the knowledge level of the person that we're sharing it with. Okay, so now the general explanation becomes specific to the patient's personal subluxations. Now, in this part, I want to just emphasize something, because how many of us have had a patient come in where the patient said, I just had an MRI and it showed I have a herniated disc or a bulging disc? And one question that we could ask when a patient says that to us, because they went to their MD or their primary care doctor, they got an MRI, and the doctor or the radiologist informed them about the degenerated disc. What we could say is, did they show you the MRI? And if you've done this, which I have, most of the time, what's the answer? The answer is no, they didn't show me the MRI. Really? So they just told you this statement, but they never actually showed you the MRI or even provided the report. Nope, they just told me. Now, this is where we can differentiate ourselves in healthcare. We can rise to a higher level of authority and education for our patients. We're about to show them the actual condition that they have, which creates more of an ownership position for them, which definitely prioritizes them to take care of it. If it's something that's more vague and more, it's about other people, people have this, but I don't, or maybe I do, but I'm not sure. That does not create ownership about taking responsibility about this condition. So we want to make sure that we show our patients what it is that they have and show them the findings that we have that allow us to be so certain when we explain what the problem is and how to solve it. So the general explanation now becomes specific to the patient's subluxations. Now, okay, actually, let me just back up because I want to go to here. So this is this section. Now, just as a recap, I'm going to jump over to the website so that I can show you the materials that we have, and then we're going to jump into the next section. So here's the script that we have. Okay, so this is, again, the CA now is going to deliver the report of findings. And the first part, so this is the CA now, because right, the doctor left the room, or doctors, if you're doing the report of findings, this is going to be you. Oh, actually, here, let me continue my share. Here we go. There it is. Oh, let's drop this down. There we go. Okay, so on this, no, actually, it's saying that my screen is paused. So we want to resume our share. Okay, let me do it this way. Stop the share. There we go. And sorry, I'm jumping around a little bit because I want to share the right screen for you. There we go. Now I got it. Okay. Okay, so here is what we're going to follow in terms of what I just went over with you. Then we're going to jump into the next section, and I'll go through the other parts of the next section. But anyways, okay, so CA delivers the report of findings. And so the CA starts by saying, the doctor reviewed your complete file with me, and I can now explain the findings. If you have questions I'm unable to answer, the doctor is available at any time. And the footnote says, this statement addresses the concerns of a patient who feels the CA is unqualified to deliver the report of findings on behalf of the doctor. Knowing the doctor is available at any time, if needed, is reassuring. So this way, we're CAs, you're going to be letting the patient know, I'm an authority on the subject, you're in good hands with me, right? So the next part is the patient. Patient says, it sounded like my condition's pretty serious. Is it really that bad? Well, the doctor is concerned about you, but feels confident that you will receive the results, or that you will achieve the results that you need. Mary, the doctor gave me specific items for you to help John with. So Mary, again, is the spouse, John being the patient. I will get those in a few minutes when I explain the recommendations. Okay, I'm ready to help in any way I can. So that's the spouse, Mary. Now it's back to the CA. John, for the doctor to accept you as a patient, it will be important for you to receive all the chiropractic care that's been recommended. First, I'll review details about your condition and the results of your exam. Then I'll explain the doctor's recommendations and the cost of your care plan. Patient says, okay, thank you. Now, footnotes 3 and 4, being the CA should also repeat the push-off as part of the doctor's requirements for accepting the patient. This will add retention and better results. So train with your team on this, doctors, because you'll get the opportunity to do that first push-off. But later on, when the CA is delivering the report of findings, you might have a patient that says, I can't afford this, or I just can't come to all those appointments. Well, at that point, if the CA is able to reflect back on what the doctor said and say, well, in order, as the doctor said, it's important, if we're going to take you on as a patient, that you're able to follow through with the recommendations. So let's find something that works for you, and let's work together to find the best solution, and so that you can get the best results, and so that the doctor can accept you as a patient, right? So you're, again, reflecting back on that push-off to help build the value of them following through with the care they need, right? That's what gets them the best results. So then at the bottom where it says, okay, thank you, footnote number 4, continue using the report of findings outline, which is in module 3, week 1. Okay, so that's the script there for you. So train with your team on that and practice it in the setting, in the room that you're going to be doing the report of findings. Sit down with your team, role play it, go through it so that they can feel comfortable in the setting that they're actually going to be doing this in. Now, the next is the CA delivers the report of findings outline, right? So we just went through this in the PowerPoint. I don't need to go through all this again, but just quickly, number 1, meet with the CA before the report of findings, explain the results of the new patient exam, answer all questions, right? Because I know that one of the big concerns from a CA standpoint about doing the report of findings is oh, I might say something that's incorrect. I might say something that's not true. A patient might ask me a question about something that I don't know the answer to. And yes, those situations can come up, but that's not a reason to not do the report of findings at all. That's a reason to go get the doctor and get answers to those questions, right? But as you repeat this and as you become more experienced, you'll find that the majority of all questions are questions that you can easily answer, and you'll feel very comfortable doing so without having to go get the doctor. So it's something that builds with time, and your confidence will build at the same time. Review all recommendations. This is with your CA. And discuss the financial arrangements, right? Because beforehand, CAs, if you're going in the room, or doctors, if you're going in the room, you want to know what the financial arrangements are, right? You want to know if this is something where you're going to need to incorporate an insurance plan, or maybe it's a PI case, a personal injury case, that's only going to cover the first 6 weeks of their care. Well, after that, then what? Well, we don't want to wait until the end of the PI case to explain what they're going to need afterwards. We want to explain that now so that we can still recommend an entire year of care for their first year, right? There's no reason to hold back just because insurance is covering the first part. It's a great thing and it's a stepping stone, but it's not the big picture. So even if in those cases there's a third-party coverage in the beginning, which we'll get into in Module 4 in detail at the next seminar, but if there is coverage for that, that's fine, but let them know the big picture. Let them know that the grass is going to be greener down the road when they get into their wellness care, when their spine is actually stabilized and they're enjoying optimum health. Review the overall prognosis is number 4, including the areas where improvement is expected and or areas where a complete recovery is not possible. So picture that, CAs. It's important that you're able to know from the doctor, here's something that won't improve, but maybe we can arrest it where it's at. We can stop it from progressing downhill or degenerating downhill. That's a huge one, right? Because patients will ask that question. And doctors, if you talk about that with your CA beforehand and let them know, here's a spot where, let me bump this up for you. Here's a spot where there's a bone spur, right? And the patient may look at that bone spur and say, wow, maybe I should just give up. Well, no, you don't want to give up, because we can actually stop it from growing, right? We can arrest the degeneration and prevent that from growing further. Well, this is a good reason for us to address this now rather than waiting until the bones are fused. And those questions come up all the time. So doctors, when you're reviewing the findings, which we're going to get into in the next section, review subluxations, point out those areas where maybe our goal is just to stop it from getting worse. Or maybe there's an area where we're looking for improvement. Another good example that comes up often is when a patient says that, when they don't have enough curve in their neck, and they say, well, doctor, am I going to be able to get more of my curve? Is that curve going to come back to normal? Well, we don't want to overpromise. Of course, that's going to be our intention. That's what we're going to pursue. But in the case that it doesn't come back, at least what we want to do is prevent it from degenerating and breaking down and potentially fusing, right? So let's at least open up the nerves and stop the degeneration. The icing on the cake would be if the curve came back to normal. Great, let's aim for that. But in the case we come short of that, we still have lots of benefits that we can provide and help you with. So make sure you're able to explain that with your patient, obviously, and also with your CAs, because those questions will come up and you want to empower them to be able to feel confident in answering those questions. Okay, so let's go back to our share screen. That is number 4. Now, number 5 is where we want to emphasize the long-term care. And this is something with DC trainings that we talk about all the time, and that is our motto. And I see Dr. Gabrielson's on the line. You know this one very well. I know you use this in your office, and your CAs do too. But our motto, and one of the mottos we have in DC trainings, is lifetime care, 1 year at a time, right? I think everybody can agree that based on the fact that as a society, we sit too much, we spend too much time in forward head flexion, we can all benefit from chiropractic care from the time we're born to the time we're not walking anymore, right? Or sitting anymore, or looking at our cell phones anymore, which doesn't usually happen anytime soon. So we want to make sure that we're recommending that ongoing lifetime care, and we just do it in blocks of time of 12-month increments. And it gives your patient a big picture view of ongoing wellness and takes them away from the focus around maybe their primary concern that brought them in. So we want to emphasize that. And that's number 5, right? So talk about that with your CAs, because those questions will come up during the report of findings from your patients. Okay, that is going to complete. We're going to jump back over to the website here. That's going to complete that section for this week of materials. But otherwise, I'm going to go ahead and sign off. So aloha from Hawaii, and thank you all for being part of DC Trainings. If you have any questions, reach out and let me know. Otherwise, I will talk to you next week, and we'll take it from there. Thank you very much.
If you would like to become a member of DC Trainings, be sure to head on over to dctrainings.com to get started today.